Okay, so today we're doing our next podcast. This podcast is all about Star Trek lore, lore trek as we have deemed it so. It's me, Parker, who really enjoys Star Trek. I really love the world of it, every
Too
aspect of
much.
it. Too much, some may say. And usually we talk about some, race or species or, faction in it. Last time we did the Klingons, we kind of learned a little bit of theirs. There's some stuff in there that could have been expanded on, but there's so much lore to do that that could be kind of hard. I'm very into Star Trek, as you guys might know, and I'm here with Atlee, who is not. He seems to enjoy it a little bit, but he has not become.
But a fledgling compared to you and
That's
your
right.
vast
The
your vast
vast
knowledge.
knowledge. Yes,
I know what the Klingons are. I
that's right.
kind of know what the Federation is,
That's right.
and I don't even really know what makes a Romulan.
Yeah.
And I know there's Spock.
Well, today we will be talking a little bit about the Romulans. We will do a podcast about them, but
Okay.
they do have some part to play in what we're talking about today. And what we are talking
Okay.
about is the pre-Federation Earth. And
Oh,
the
okay.
Federation throughout the entire Star Trek series, we only see pretty much the perspective of the Federation. We've never had a series from the Klingons' perspective or from the Romulans' perspective. So we don't know a whole bunch about those factions other than what is said. But we do know a lot about the Federation, and we're going to be splitting their lore into probably three separate parts. So
Interesting.
this will
Okay.
be the first of it. Um,
And I want to preface this episode with saying that the last episode was kind of a little bit of a wish wash of just information. We didn't really have a structure to it. This one we kind of we have a little more structure. We got
yeah,
some bullet points to cover, and we're not going to get really lost in the details as much as we want to, rapid fire for people who are kind of new to the series, like me. I think it'd be a lot better than a really long rambling video.
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah. I think
Parker's done
that's
his
that's
best.
right. All right. So here we're gonna start off here. So
Okay.
here's what we first need to cover. Okay, Earth.
All right.
Much like
Earth.
Earth. Much like our regular history, it went through World War One. It went through World War Two, the same. But afterwards of World War Two, the world was kind of thrown into chaos. Right? They had a lot of poverty, famine, disease. This spurred
Okay.
World War Three. Not
Wonderful.
not much is known about World War Three, other than that in the Star Trek universe they eventually go to war with um, what is called later on the Eugenics War, which is
Oh
Khan.
goodness.
Yeah,
What?
yeah,
What?
which is Khan and which Khan himself is a genetic superhuman, right? Basically, what happened was that people were starting to try and build super soldiers, genetic super soldiers, and those super soldiers underneath Khan, he led them into battle and tried to take over the world.
Okay.
They were eventually defeated and put into cryostasis in case Earth needed them for some reason,
So
right? They were the
are they still
smartest.
around?
They are still around. That is what the Wrath of Khan was all about. The movie The
Okay.
Wrath of Khan. They are not still around in the Next Generation DS9 era. Um,
Hmm.
Genetically altered people are, but not Khan himself. But the
I
Wrath of
see.
Khan is all about Khan coming back.
So
Okay.
how they beat him? Was he just
Well,
outsmarted
the
or?
problem is that they were super soldiers, right? But there
Uh
weren't a
huh.
lot of them. And so although he
I
was
see.
very, very tactical, like Khan was known for being not only a very charismatic person, but a very tactically and strategic officer, like military strategist. Very good.
Okay.
He could not overcome the fact that there wasn't a lot of them.
Hmm.
And
Yeah,
so
that's fair.
they were eventually defeated. Um,
How to take over a world when you have 7 people?
Yeah, right. There wasn't a lot of them. So anyway, but that goes on for a little bit. And so anyway, the world after this World War III and the Eugenics Wars is just broken and defeated. And Uh, the funny thing is that we start off right. The Earth starts off as a warp civilization in the 21st century, but our history of how Earth became part of the Federation starts in the 24th century with Jean-Luc Picard.
Oh wait. So we were a warp. What does that mean? A warp
So, a
civilization.
warp civilization. So, in Star Trek, there's something known as the Prime Directive,
Okay.
which was created by the
I'll keep
Vulcans.
it.
And basically, it's a rule that says we will not interfere in the development of a nation or a planet unless they have achieved warp technology. And warp technology allows you to explore the world. And they say, okay, at that point, or explore the galaxy, right? And so at that point, once a civilization has reached warp technology, then
Okay.
they are deemed worthy to be brought in and to understand, and they're enlightened enough to understand and deal with other races uh,
I see.
in the galaxy.
So why did it take us 3,000 years to, or 300 years to get into
Right.
the Federation after we found warp?
So here's this is what this will go over. So we start off with uh, we start off in the 24th century, right? We start off in the 24th century with Jean-Luc Picard, who the Borg have come to assimilate Earth, and
Okay.
they find out when the Borg get there that Earth is too well defended because Earth already knew that the Borg, and for those who don't know what the Borg are, they're just kind of this mechanical species bent on destruction and assimilation. The Borg knew that Earth could defend itself, so its plan was to send a ship back in time to assimilate Earth before warp was achieved. So that way they couldn't, fight back. So
Yeah.
the ship goes back in time, and so does Jean-Luc Picard. And the whole point of the Borg was to stop Earth from achieving warp and to assimilate them. And the Borg fail at this. Jean-Luc Picard helps a man named Zephyrin Cochrane, Jean-Luc Picard and company. Zephyrin Cochrane. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Um,
Yeah, I'm five. What about it?
he is basically a hero to Earth because he is the first person to create um, a warp capable ship named the Phoenix out of a old nuclear missile that was never used, right?
Interesting. Okay.
Because the Earth was plagued by, just war, famine, and disease, there wasn't really much that the governments could do to kind of control their people. So there was a whole bunch of disarray within and on Earth. And Zephyrin Cochrane said, okay, well, I want to create this warp thing because if I do this, people will pay me millions, right? I'll be
Yeah.
rich.
Capitalist man.
What he didn't realize is that that would signify the change of everything, his world and the entire galaxy, right? Because Earth is the center point of the faction known as the very powerful faction known as the Federation.
Hmm.
So he creates warp. He goes to warp. He comes back with the help of Picard and his crew before they go back to their own time. And because his successful warp drive, the Vulcans, a scout ship from the Vulcans, nearby in a nearby system, just happened to notice that there is a new warp vessel within the sector, and they go and meet
Oh.
them, and that's what is known as first contact. Right, the Vulcans touch down, they meet Zephyrin Cochrane, and that starts Earth's introduction into the larger political sphere of the Alpha Quadrant, which is where they're located. So, right, so Picard goes back to the 24th century, and now we're in the 21st century because of time travel, right? He went back in time now.
Okay, so I'm confused.
Yes.
So
So Picard is from the 24th century,
the
where
20, and so he goes back in time to the 23rd, 21st
21st,
century,
yes,
and then
21st.
gives technology from the 24th century to the 21st century.
No, he doesn't give technology. He just makes sure that the Borg do not interfere with Zephyrin Cochrane's, um, uh, what he says, like, experiment, which is the Phoenix, right? Because the Borg's whole plan was to go in there and disrupt Zephyr Cochrane's experiment, so that way they never become part of this Federation, and to assimilate the planet.
Oh, I see. I see. I see. Okay.
But Picard and
All right.
crew
So
stopped that, right?
okay.
With
Do they
their
have the Enterprise, or are they just people?
No, they have the Enterprise. And
Oh,
the
okay. Okay.
Enterprise,
So they.
yes. And so they were able to stop that ship from interfering within the timeline and allowed Zephyr Cochrane to create the Phoenix. The Phoenix flies. We get a Vulcan scout ship. It sets down. Spock's it's kind of debated, but this relative of Spock, we don't really know if it's great grandfather or grandfather, is one of the people who makes first contact.
I see.
Right. So that happens. That radically changes after realizing that there's aliens. The Earth becomes one unified government. They decide that they're going to change the way in which Earth interacts to become more enlightened. So they start allowing for the government to kind of take care of basic needs of the people and the citizenry, and allowing them to really just become scientific and work on
Focus
their
heavily on the
passions.
sciences.
Focus
So, what do
heavily
you
on the
think are
sciences.
the pinnacles of society
Federation,
for the Federation compared to the Klingons, which are
right?
clearly honor and
War,
war,
conquest,
conquest, and stories,
right?
and
Yes,
victory. What is the counter to that? Because Earth is really kind of the exact opposite of the Klingon Empire, in
yes,
my opinion.
yes. They are. I think that is right. And Earth is so intriguing because if you ever go back and watch, if anyone is ever interested in watching Voyager, they deal with this a lot, where humans become known for being very good at politics, and they become known for being very, very curious about everything. Curious about everything. So the point of the Federation is to be this scientific entity that is that wants to spread their ideas and values about equality and freedom, along with making the scientific progress. And they're very curious about everything. So you'll constantly see in Voyager people like, oh, what's this? What's this planet? What's this planet? And that can get them into some trouble, but it does also further scientific exploration.
So, would you say that the Federation is the most powerful uh, faction in the galaxy? Is that fair to say?
No, so we do learn of a lot of different factions within the galaxy that are much greater technologically than the Federation. We see a whole bunch of factions that are um, have been around longer than the Federation, but the Federation is so good at adapting and so good at figuring out scientific problems to all of these that they have the resources, right? Because they have hundreds of thousands of member worlds,
Yeah.
member
How
stations.
many? Do you know how many races are a part of the Federation?
No, it is never directly defined, but they span almost the entire Alpha Quadrant. So they are a
So what would that
huge,
mean?
huge faction. So the galaxy is split into four quadrants, right? The
Okay.
Alpha, the Gamma,
Yeah.
the Beta.
Let me see if I can look up Star Trek map because I am confused here.
Alpha,
Trek
Gamma,
map.
Beta, and Delta Quadrant, right? And so it's basically if you were to split the
Okay.
galaxy into fourths, right?
Wait. Here, I got it. Can you see this?
No, we just see your.
Can you see it now?
Yes,
Okay, so that's okay. The Borg, the Dominion.
right.
What the heck are all the Swarm? What the
Yes,
hell?
yes.
All right, well we got a lot to cover.
We do have a lot to cover. Yeah,
Ferengi Alliance. I know
for,
them. They're funny.
yes. On that map, I think the Federation is uncharacteristically small. If you go to the first one, I think that's a better image. That
Mm,
it's a much larger entity within the Alpha Quadrant. Um,
I see. Maybe that was like an old one
yeah,
or something.
right. But it is.
Fan map. Well, this clearly you're a
I
terrible fan.
yeah. It is a
What
very
the?
large faction, and so it's got a lot of resources. It's very scientific, so it can really mobilize to fight most of its problems. So I don't know if I would say it's the strongest, but I definitely know it's up there.
Okay.
Now, so that was 21st century history, right?
Hmm.
They meet the Vulcans, and the Vulcans really take an interest in the Federation or in Earth. They're like, okay, well, these people seem enlightened. They seem like we can kind of we can first of all guarantee their independence. So they say, okay, no one else in the Alpha Quadrant can touch these people, and they say, okay, well, we can guide them. And the Vulcans at this time are really technologically advanced. They have already
Okay.
reached
So
warp.
I have a question.
Yes.
Are the humans not the most powerful faction in the Federation? I'm
Um.
confused now because you're making it sound like we joined the party late.
Well, we definitely joined the technological party late, but once the Federation is formed, the Federation relies on Starfleet and on Earth, right? Because Earth is its home world, as we'll see later on in this kind of
Okay, but
history.
how does Earth become the home world
Right.
if?
So we'll
All
get
right,
to that.
I'm cutting you off.
You
All
are
right.
okay. So we go to the 22nd century where Vulcans are kind of becoming mentors to the Federation or to Earth, and Earth decides to start the unified government of Earth starts to create this program called Warp 5 program, which is basically their first warp capable ship that they send out,
Sponsored by the government, right? Not
sponsored by the
just some
government. Right,
homeless dude in a garage build.
right. Um, and it's called the Warp 5 program again. The it's christened the Enterprise NX-01, captained by Jonathan Archer, and he is the
Okay.
first captain that is sets forth right with its
You
mission.
really like Jonathan Archer. You bring him up.
Archer's a great captain. He is such a although the series Star Trek Enterprise was only 4 seasons, it was canceled after that. I really do like it. I thought it was a
Okay.
good. I know some people didn't, but I really did. Um, so anyway, Archer sets out, and his goal is pretty much make a name for humanity. That's pretty much what it was. It was explore space and
Uh
see
huh.
what there is to see.
Put our name on the map.
Pretty much.
I'm a small Twitch streamer and I want to get big.
That's right.
What do I gotta do? If I gotta blow up some planets and commit some war crimes, by
Well,
God,
maybe
I'm
not.
gonna kill some Klingons and
So
put us on the map.
here's what's interesting though is that the Vulcans, although they were mentors to Earth, and they kind of guided their technology, right? Because they kind of helped the humans kind of evolve their technology. They refused to share any of their technology. They were reaching warp 7 by the time which were the fastest technology, capable technology in the quadrant, right?
Okay, because I think warp 10 is the fastest they can reach now.
Right. Yes. Yes, it kind of gets shifted in, you know, the warp scale that they use here is much less than the warp scale that they use later.
Okay.
They have to change it because, in canon reason, it's because they had found new technology to make warp much faster, and so they had to change the warp scale. So warp 5 here would be like their warp 2.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Oh, okay. So it's like a more exponential scale, like a
right,
Richter scale.
right.
Okay, that
Yeah, yeah,
makes
yeah.
sense.
Yes. Anyway, so Archer heads out and he finds a new species named the Andorians that are located right next, kind of close to Earth. And it turns out
Okay.
the Andorians and the Vulcans kind of hate each other.
All right. What do the Andorians look like? Because we know the Vulcans look like space elves.
The Andorians are weird.
Are they more slug people? Are you?
No,
Is this another episode with slug people in them?
no, 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 no,
Okay.
no, no. The Andorians are humans that are blue and have antennas.
God. Sure. Andorians, Star Trek. What? What? What?
We can't see it if you're
I know. Give me one
okay, all
second.
right. Yep. Yep. That is, by the way, same guy who plays Wei Yun in
That
DS9.
what?
He's a great Jeffrey
It's just
Combs.
blue Shrek. It's
It
just
is.
crappy Shrek.
It is. They live in on Andor, um, and their planet is all
Ooh.
like ice and stuff like that. But
Ooh. You know what? We're gonna have that cover that.
so they're there, and them and the Vulcans didn't really get along, and so they were kind of kept out of. The Vulcans were like, okay, well, we met this race, but we don't want to mentor them like we do Earth. So they
Okay.
kind of leave them on their own for a while, which the Andorians kind of resented a little bit.
They're like, oh, you're gonna pick favorites now, are you, you
That's right.
asshole?
That's right.
Okay.
That's
Is it
right.
just because we have blue antennas, huh? Because we look like Shrek,
Yeah, they
huh?
figured that they were too emotional, too unwilling to work, which is kind of debated within Andorian society. So then we move on to the turmoil on Vulcan in terms of there was a whole bunch of uh, terrorist attacks on Vulcan that was actually influenced or actually taken part by Romulan um, agents.
Okay, okay. Who are the Romulans?
The Romulans, so in
And
Vulcan,
why? We got to keep it centered on Federation here. So why is this? Are we going to bring this back around to the Federation?
yes,
Okay, all right.
yes,
So who are the Romulans, and what do the Andorians have to do with this?
right, right, right. So
All right.
there are four species that create what is called the Coalition of Planets, and then later, after some expansion, gets renamed to the Federation, the United
Okay.
Federation of Planets. The four
Okay.
species are Vulcan, human, Andorians, and Tellarites. Tellarites are
Okay. Wait.
basically
I thought you
dwarves.
said the Andorians didn't. All right. Wait. I need to draw. I need to draw this out. So we have the four species,
We have the
four
four species.
boys. All
That's
right.
right.
We got the regular boys, us. We have Spoke
The
and the Vulcans,
We have
and
Vulcans.
they got the two fingers,
Yeah, they got the two fingers and large ears,
the pointy ears.
pointy ears. Yep,
All right. And then we have guys with antennas,
antennas.
and they're blue. They're just like blue.
They are blue.
And, and so
And then
you said that the Andorians weren't mentored by the Vulcans. Did they still reach their? Did they
yes,
still reach space?
they
Okay.
reach space. It takes them longer than the humans, right? Because the humans are being guided technologically by the Vulcans. The Vulcans don't
And then
give
we
us any.
have
The Tellarites, which are
the.
basically dwarves.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, they're dwarves that are alien dwarves, so they look a little weird.
All right. So
Right,
that's these boys.
that's those boys. So, uh, the Romulans, right, are kind of influencing on Vulcan like these
Ah.
terrorist attacks and basically trying to get the Vulcans to stop mentoring the humans because who the Romulans are, yeah,
The hell they
what
don't have eyes.
they do have eyes. I think that's just a bad photo of it from the original series.
What the heck?
They showed
Oh,
one
okay.
from
They look like
Enterprise.
the seven dwarves. Here we go.
Right. Yes, that is a
Okay.
Tellarite. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So we have these four boys.
Right. And so,
Um,
yes.
and the Angorians are attacking the Vulcans to try to get them to mentor them instead of the.
No. So they don't attack anybody. The Andorians are just kind of angry and upset at the Vulcans, but they have been mainly peaceful. What we
I
learn,
see.
right, on Vulcan, what's happening is the Romulans are another faction within.
All right. So they're not a part of the four
They're
boys.
not a part of the Four Boys. What we learn about the Romulans later are that they are. Vulcan went into a civil war a long time ago, with one side adopting logic and reason, and the other side accepting the emotionality of life. And
I
those
see.
accepting the emotionality of life were thought of to walk under the Hawk's wing. That's what they called themselves. And those who walk under the Hawk's wing, and they eventually settle to two planets, Romulus and Remus. They become known as the or the
Oh, so
Romulans.
they're like space Rome.
They are Space Rome, yes. And so the whole
They look very
point,
stupid. They're very angry.
they are very angry. They are all about deception, lies, and deceit. And they notice that because the Vulcans have chosen the humans, they think that this is going to eventually result in less territory for them to expand because the Romulans are all about expansion, subjugation, taking over worlds.
And if we looked at the map previously, it looked like the Federation split straight through the middle of the thing. So yeah, it makes sense.
Right, so they thought that they were going
Um,
to take over their territory, and so they start trying to do some puppet strings on Vulcan to get Vulcans to come back and isolate for the foreseeable future by having these terrorist attacks, by helping to, kind of instigate fights on
trying to
Vulcan.
break up the four boys.
Right,
Is it? Oh, okay.
right.
So they're trying to break up
This results in the crisis of Babel. And basically what it is Romulans,
Babel.
yeah, and the Romulans sent in two drone ships into uh, the Federation or the Earth space and Vulcan space, and the Tellarites and the Andorians, and they sent these drone ships to uh, create chaos, right? And basically, the drone ships
Mm-hmm.
would mimic the warp signatures of other species, right? So they would mimic Earth warp signatures, and they would take down cargo ships, and they would take down freighters, and they would take down and just attack random science outposts. And
Okay.
the goal was to create this feeling of, oh, well, the other people are trying to take advantage of us, the other species are trying to destroy us.
I see.
Jonathan Archer finds this out, and Jonathan Archer is able to diplomatically get the Tellarites, the Andorians, and the Vulcans. Right? Jonathan Archer's first officer was a Vulcan lady named T'Pol, and
Okay.
they were able to gather them together, and they were able to come together and realize, hey, this is the Romulans pulling the strings. There is no reason for us to be fighting. There's no reason for us to have these feelings.
Mm.
Although the Andorians still felt like left out by the Vulcans, they were able to put this aside for they thought that there was going to be an upcoming war. Because again, these are Romulan ships in their own space. They're like,
Yeah, for
okay,
sure.
well, we might get attacked. So what do? We don't have as much good technology as the Romulans, right? Because the Romulan technology kind of matches the Vulcans.
Interesting.
And
Because they're the same faction, pretty much. They're the
right,
same.
they're the same
Okay.
faction, and so they're like, okay, we have to get together. And so this is when the Coalition of Planets form. It's a coalition of planets form. These four major species are in it. They devise this charter. They devise, um, you know, things and rules to follow by and how to get member states in. This later becomes what's known as the Unified Federation of Planets.
Okay. And do we know at least how many species are in the Unified Federation of Planets?
No, that is never specifically designated.
Oh.
So it's
How
still a
many can you
mystery.
list off the top of your head?
Oh boy. Um. Well, we got the Bolians, we got the Andorians, we got the Tellarites, we got humans, Vulcans, we've got, um, for a short period of time, the Bajorans. We've got,
They leave?
yeah. Well, the Bajorans were an independent nation. Then they became part of
Mm,
the Federation for a very short period of time, and then they exited the Federation.
I
Um,
see.
let's see. Let me think of who we got here.
Oh God! All right, I'm
Yeah,
not gonna bog you
it's
down. Keep telling your story.
yeah.
There's way too many
There's a
people. I'm getting
lot.
lost.
There's a lot of
Jesus
people. There's a
Christ.
lot of yeah. Anyway, so that happens. They create the Coalition of Planets, later Federation of Planets, and Archer, right, became known as this great explorer. What's really interesting about Archer himself is that he does a whole bunch of like the Star Trek Enterprise is all about temporal stuff. So Archer's fighting these kind of like battles with these temporal beings.
Oh,
But
okay. Like, are they like Ghosts? What do you mean temporal
So
beings?
so what we learn later on is the Federation, after years of war, and this is way
Against the
later.
Romulans, right? After they beat the Romulans, I assume,
Well, no. So
right?
this is far away. The Federation turns to temporal mechanics, and has what they installed, the temporal prime directive, which is you're not supposed to mess up the
With the
timeline, and start focusing on taking down people who do mess with the timeline. And
they had the
Archer's
time police.
right, and so those time police come back to Archer and say, okay, well, there is a faction in your timeline messing it up, and that's the Suliban Cabal. We talked about them last time. They were trying
Oh
to
God.
instigate, stuff. They're known as a spongy character. They really do look like sponges. It's really funny, but he's kind of bogged down with that a lot of the time, so he's not necessarily um, like watching over
Doing
this
doing the
creation.
Romulan thing.
Right. He's not really watching over this coalition of planets, and it eventually devolves into something. Devolves into a group, an opposing group called Terra Prime, which was an attempt to stop the coalition of planets from coming true. Um,
From
because
who? Wait, who formed this group?
right, so John Frederick Praxton.
All right,
Um,
so this is the Confederacy.
this is pretty much, yeah. So they attempt at all costs to make sure that the coalition of planets do not form.
Why? What
Um,
was the reason? What was the
basic,
stupid reason for slavery?
Basically, their idea was that they were better off being isolated from these species that were going to attempt to devolve their politics into things that they might not agree with, right? Because whenever
Undermine the racial purity of the Federation? What the
yes,
hell?
yeah, it was about that. It was also about the fact that they did not believe that all of these species could live together in harmony and could actually govern something well. And so they're like, "There's no way we're gonna do this." But Archer does eventually come back and
Dude, all
does
of them reach. If you have a bunch of people that all reach warp, you're all pretty much on the same level of
right,
intelligence.
right,
What the
right.
what
So
isn't gonna work?
it was, yeah, it was ridiculous. And Archer came back and he was able to stop that from happening, stop them from destroying the coalition of planets. So the coalition of planets form, and this pushes the Romulans to war. The Romulans go, okay, well, we've got these species that have been on our borders now for some time, and they've now all formed a defensive pact, and we can't allow that. We can't allow that to stand, and so we must strike now. And so that starts off the Earth Romulan War. Uh, the Battle of Chiron is the final battle, right? Not much is known about the Earth Romulan War, but what we do know is that it results in a humiliating defeat for the Romulans. They are insanely. They underestimated this new sharing of technology by the Vulcans, this new power by, the Andorians had a lot of ships built, a lot of ships that were built for war. The Andorians were ready for
Because they're
war.
probably thinking about going to war with the Vulcans.
Vulcans, right? They thought because the Romulans had kind of pulled strings on, some of their territory too. They thought the Vulcans were actively shooting at them, right? Whenever they threw those two Romulan drones in,
So they screwed themselves.
they
The
screwed
Romulans screwed
they screwed themselves.
themselves.
And
That's
at
hilarious.
the Battle of Chiron, which not a lot is known about this battle. All we do know is that the combined forces of Earth, Vulcan, Andorians, and Tellarites kicked their ass badly, completely destroyed them. And
Sent
so,
them screaming home.
right, and so this results in a treaty which we create neutral zones, right? So that way the Romulans can't enter into the neutral zone, and the Federation can't enter into the neutral zone, and the Romulans go into isolation. They pretty much go and devolve. Their Romulan Senate devolves back into like infighting because they're like, we lost. How could we possibly lose this? This must be.
Wait, how did we lose to some scrub who just showed up?
That's right. Scrub who just showed up and didn't have the warp technology that we did. Our ships were faster. Our ships were stronger. The problem is that we didn't have nearly enough of them to beat them. And so this creates the now Federation of Planets. It's founded by a treaty on Earth. Earth is decided to be the designation of the homeworld because Jonathan Archer, a human, was able to help solve the Babel crisis, was able to say, hey, no, we actually have sensor data that shows that this is the Romulans doing this. They are able to bring the Vulcans and the Andorians and the Tellarites onto this treaty, and thus the Federation is born. It's known as the Federation Day within lore, and people are, it's kind of like a holiday. And the Federation decides that they are going to be specifically scientific because they do not want to be known as this war nation state. So they pretty much shift gears. They refit all of their ships to be specifically science based, to seek out, with one directive, to seek out new life and new civilizations. And this is
and
what
bring them into the
pretty much,
Federation.
yes. And they decide
and
to
I
create
and I
Starfleet to do this.
okay. So Starfleet is a human
Yes.
primarily. Okay. So is there other names for the fleets of like the Vulcans?
No, so afterwards, the Vulcans pretty much disseminate all of their technology to these these four species and four factions, and what they find is because of all of these major scientists now working together, they find that their fleets become outdated pretty fast. The
I would
rapid
imagine.
the rapid progression of technology between early Federation days and when Kirk is put into charge of the USS Enterprise is just astounding. Like
Hmm.
massive technological upgrades. And so they end up keeping their fleet as kind of a very defensive fleet, but they don't build anymore. Same as the Andorians and same as the
Hmm.
Tellarites. They decide to put all of their resources into building specific Federation ships. And they
I see.
decide
So
the last thing I will say is they decide to
okay.
use the humans as Starfleet because the humans were so good at being these diplomatic kind of people, and all of these species realize that the humans have this curiosity to explore that they just did not really share. And
Oh,
although
okay, but wait a minute. They go, okay. Oh, the humans really like to explore. What's on that death planet over there? Oh, look at that collapsing sun. You go,
yeah,
human. Look at that.
that is
Like,
true.
oh, that's
They're
interesting. Ah,
I,
ah.
they do, join Starfleet, but they feel like Starfleet, because the humans are willing to do this. Yeah, you're right. There's a whole bunch of risk involved. That they are like, okay, well, you guys can go ahead and do that, and you guys are really good at bringing us to the table, so maybe you'll be really good in bringing others to the table. We will sit back
Okay,
and focus on science.
I see. Because that makes sense. Because if you're developing technology at such an extreme rate, even still to this day, the ships you build will instantly become obsolete.
Yes.
Right. So, and your country, your civilization is so massive that if any invasion does happen, you're able to pump out military fighters and massive warships pretty much instantaneously.
Yes.
Um,
Huge. Huge.
and so you're able to just be like, oh yeah, this is the instead of having two, 400 old ships, you'll have 100 brandly new, outfitted ships, with crews that have experience because they're on, previous exploration vessels and stuff like that. And that makes sense.
Right, right.
Yeah.
And the fact that they were able to so rapidly advance is what kept the Romulans in their isolation because they were like, well, we can't go to war with these people again, we will lose. And that kept the Klingons from declaring war until much later. Um,
When their leadership is idiotic.
right, when their
Stupid.
leadership began to fail and they decided that their conquest needed to start uh, in coming into Federation territory because that was the only way to unify their people. But
Okay.
but because of this rapid technology, they were seen as okay. Well, we can't be attacking them anymore. Like they're
Mhm.
not easy pickings anymore.
Okay.
Um, the last thing to kind of because this is the kind of going to be the end of the part one of the Federation.
Okay.
Um, because they have now created this federation. They're now they're advancing scientifically. Jonathan Archer, right, who had a huge role in helping to develop the Federation, helping to stop the coalition of planets from pretty much dying because of one person's idiotic, you know,
Yeah.
isolationist, xenophobic movement.
So we could just say the Confederacy of the space of
Right,
space.
right.
Yeah,
And
like
so
okay.
Jonathan Archer becomes this kind of figure looked upon as this, kind of in this heroic ambassador role. He ends up becoming an ambassador to Andoria. Um,
The blue people.
Andoria, yeah. So because he does create somewhat of a bond there with the Andorian general. And so anyway, so he decides to he was eventually elected the what isn't really talked about a whole bunch, but is in Enterprises. He is elected the Federation president, which is one of the only humans that we know to have been Federation president. Usually, whenever we see the Federation president, it's always some other species. And he eventually steps down at age 80.
It's not
Um,
even that old.
yeah, yeah, and so he, and so then this is where we end up getting the
uh,
Federation.
okay. Well, that was great. Um, Thank you, Parker.
Yeah. Yep.
That was a lot better than I think last episode. So I think we did pretty good.
Yes. I
And
definitely
I
think
drew
so.
some amazing
You
pictures.
drew some amazing
I
pictures. You
I
even
am
have
quite the
pictures of the
artist.
species on there. Yeah.
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 I mean, like Khan with the get us.
That's right.
Oh, fuck. All right. Well, that was good. You know what? A lot more hectic than I originally thought it would be. I'm gonna be honest with you. I didn't even know there was
Yeah. Well, it started
a
off with
giant
a
mutant war. What the hell is that about? That's crazy.
mutant war, which again is explored in the Wrath of Khan and the
Hmm.
new films Into Darkness. Um,
Okay.
it's funny that it starts out in the future
Hmm.
as does like the temporal stuff, right? Jean-Luc Picard actually helps the Earth to get to um, warp civilization. We do see in the movie First Contact what happens if Jean-Luc Picard does not go through
Hmm.
the rift in time, and we see that
I
Earth is
think
all
we'll
assimilated.
I want to do an entire episode perhaps on different timelines of Star Trek.
Oh,
I
that
think
would
that
be
would be
fun.
fun.
That would be
That and
interesting.
I would like to do a really quick episode on just every single race really quickly, like a 5 minute little bit or even like 5 seconds on each race. Like this is what they look like. They're stupid. This is what
Oh,
they look like.
yep. No, I
You know
think
what I
that'd be
mean?
great. I think that would
Because
be that would work. And we'll keep doing this. We'll keep doing some minor factions, and we'll do some major factions. I had talked about the idea of doing a species 8472 episode.
I don't
They're
even know what that is.
they're pretty fun.
I
Um,
don't even know what that is. Why are they a number?
yeah.
What loser names themselves a
Well,
number?
we'll go over
Honestly.
that in the next podcast.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you guys so much for watching. If you're still here, um, like, subscribe, everything like that. We have no viewers, so I guess it doesn't really matter. But we're gonna try to pump these out weekly. I've been having fun.
Yeah, I think
Um,
this is
so
great.
so thank you, Parker,
Yep.
and I think we'll end it there.